Hello YouTube, welcome back to part 3 of the Counterpick tier list that I've been doing. If you haven't seen the first 2 parts, make sure you go back. So far we're like in the middle of it, we're getting into it. We're on the 3rd row of the Smash character roster, so please make sure that you like and subscribe so you can see more content like this and we can talk about more things. And this can mostly help you out if you want to pick a Counterpick in the future. Alright, and next up we're going to be talking about Mewtwo. I would say Mewtwo goes into the niche Counterpick tier. Now I know that Wadi has been putting in work with Mewtwo, showing everyone that Mewtwo's actually not that bad, has a lot of interesting strengths, has some interesting matchups and can do pretty well against certain characters, but I do think that if you're going to play Mewtwo, it's like a speed Samus version of like the charge shot character. He does still have the flaws, you know, he's still very big, he's still very light, he still has to deal with characters mashing on him. But as a Counterpick character, if you can pick your spots very well, I think he does super well against a lot of common characters. Even the hard matchups that he has to play against, he can just avoid with your main. But I think this is more so if you really wanted a charge shot character, you could just use Samus. I think she does a lot better against more characters and does a lot worse against her bad matchups. Or it does a lot better against her worst matchups. But I think Mewtwo does have his place, and there's very much specific things about Mewtwo that the opponent's gonna have to learn, and there's no Mewtwo's out there, so this isn't something that would be out of question to consider. Alright, next we're going to be doing Roy and Chrom, because they both fall under the Echo situation. I would say Roy goes into the amazing Counterpick tier, and I would put Chrom in the great Counterpick tier. Now first I'm going to be talking about Chrom because I feel like it makes a lot of, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to put them in different tiers, right? But I think Chrom's recovery is very explodable no matter which character he's facing. And I feel as though if you really wanted to counterpick with Chrom, there are a lot of great pluses. He's fast, his pressure is amazing, his juggling is really good, he's amazing at ledge. Chrom is still a great character, don't get me wrong. But it can be pretty frustrating to when even the people that you would counterpick with Chrom, it would just be so easy for you to get cheesed in the tournament setting. So sure, you can just try to avoid that, and it will take practice to just try to avoid that certain thing. But I do think that it can be pretty frustrating to deal with as a secondary. So it just comes down to which matchups you want to use Chrom for. If you feel like that you can deal with it, Chrom can be amazing for it. But that goes on to my next character, Roy. Now, I think the thing that separates Chrom and Roy from how good of a counterpick they are, other than, you know, the fact that Chrom's recovery is so exploitable, is Roy's explosiveness is insane. I think there are many times that Chrom will have to kill you at around 90 or 100, and that makes sense, and it's still broken. Like, jab is still amazing, he still has many good moves, but Roy has such a good side B, such a good side B punishes, such a good chase punishes. His shield pressure is even more broken. I think when it comes to just picking a counter pick, Roy can destroy characters a lot harder. Like, I feel like Chrom is going to be playing a little bit more fair, not so much fair that it's not silly, because of course he can cheese a few people with a lot of stuff, but Roy can go insane when he wants to. No matter how far back he is, he can definitely make it back. And I think that that's something to consider when you pick a secondary, is just how hard they beat characters. I feel like Roy beats characters a little harder than Chrom does just because of how his recovery works. So I think they both have amazing qualities for a counterpick, and Roy would be the choice that I would say is like one of the best counterpicks in the entire game. Alright, moving on, we're going to Mr. Game & Watch. Now, Mr. Game & Watch can be pretty interesting. I'll put him in a great counterpick. Now, I think Mr. Game & Watch is very hated in the community because of how silly he is. He's a very silly character, amazing moves, like some of the best moves in the game, and can be just really cheesy. Not even really cheesy, but really obnoxious to both hit and stop getting hit by, because his damage output's incredible. And I think that while he is good at all of those things, when you're trying to counterpick somebody with Game & Watch, it's a bit weird, because I feel as though he is a player matchup counterpick. Like, if you don't know how to fight Game & Watch at all, which a lot of people don't, then it makes sense to counterpick to him. But a lot of characters who, it's very much like similar to how you would play Luigi, in the sense of how you would fight Luigi, of like, you just gotta space him out, make sure you don't get hit by dumb shit, and pick your spots very, very well while also not exploding. A lot of characters can actually do that with a bit of time, and Game & Watch isn't so intuitive that you can just pick him up and use him immediately. It takes a certain style to be able to use correctly, which is why I don't think there are actually that many Game & Watches doing work as much as Meister is. But you know, I know a lot of people want to say Game & Watch is super free, super easy, and there are a lot of things he's easy at doing, but what I think is comes down to just how you kill people, how you get down, how you avoid dying. There's a lot of things to learn with Game & Watch. And once you do learn those things, it makes sense, and you know, it can still work. But when there's characters out there who don't have to learn as much of what they need to be doing, what their game plan is per matchup, I think there are just better counterpicks out there. Really good character, obviously, yes. But what he has to do per matchups to counterpick people, I think is going to be a bit tough. I think even the best characters he counterpicks, like Pikachu and stuff, there are just better characters out there. Alright, next we have Meta Knight. Now, a lot of people might be expecting me to put him in niche counterpick, but I'm gonna actually go even further and put him in even counterpick and used to mean him. Nah, I think he's just honestly a great counterpick character. Now, I think that the things that make Meta Knight the really, really good counterpick isn't really how good he is against every character in the game, but the good characters that he faces, that he counterpicks in extremely polarizing ways. I think he absolutely fucks up Rob in the right spots, in the right stages. I think Palutena hates fighting hates fighting Meta Knight. I honestly think Palutena loses to Meta Knight. I think all the big characters don't like dealing with Meta Knight. I think a lot of floaty characters don't like dealing with Meta Knight. I think like Sonic can struggle a lot. Lucina has a bit of issue, but not too much, but Lucina can have issues. Like, I think Meta Knight has a very crazy matchup spread where his bad matchups suck. They are really, really rough. But I think his good matchups are both very relevant and very obnoxious for the person that isn't Meta Knight. I think when it comes to counterpicking somebody, I think a lot of people are going to be dreading a good Meta Knight play. And I don't think his game plan is that hard to understand. You know, you just avoid getting hit with a lot of stuff, combo off with the things, dash attack's always a threat. You got to learn what moves do what, and you know, learning your character. But his game plan is there, it's known, and it's still terrifying for a lot of the relevant characters. That is a sign for a great counterpick character, and I think more people should consider it when they want to play against someone they don't like fighting. Alright, and now we're going to Pit and Dark Pit, which I think they both fall under the same thing, so I'll just put Dark Pit because I think Dark Pit's better, but it doesn't really matter. I'll put him in usually a counterpick you're used to main them here. Pit and Dark Pit are both very rare characters in the meta. I think it comes down to seeing them having not a lot of crazy things about them that make people want to go to them, want to flock to them. They don't feel like a very fantastic character. Not a bad character, because I still think they're pretty solid, but you know, I think a lot of players are just telling that, it's easy to tell that Pit and Dark Pit aren't the most explosive in Smash Ultimate, but they do have a lot of great things about them that I think could apply to matchups. That I think, like, their edge guardings are honestly really, really solid. Their combo game's gotten better and better, and their neutral isn't hard to understand. It's honestly pretty solid against a lot of characters. I think they have a lot of even matchups though, which is why I think if you're counterpicking with them, I think it's because you know what you're doing and the other person doesn't, and you used to play them before. I don't think there's any Pit main. I don't think there's any person picking up Pit that wasn't a Pit main before. They're just characters that do outclass them, that do have just more pressure, better edge guarding. I don't know what kind of niche they would fill as a counterpick more than you know what you're doing against the matchup you're facing. Which is to say, if you do love any of these characters, then you don't have to listen to me, like, play them who you want to play. I just do think for picking up Pit and Dark Pit, other than them being fun, they just do get outclassed by a few others. Alright, next will be Zero Suit Samus. Alright, I'm going to put her in usually in Counterpick if you used to main them. It took me a while to think about it, but I think that she does belong here. Now, we all know how Mars loves to say that Zero Suit sucks, and I don't agree because he's obviously trolling, but I think it comes down to that she is so precise in a lot of ways that I think that you wouldn't need to pick her up as a secondary if you're not trying to completely just camp and that is your goal. Even if you're trying to completely camp and that's your goal, I think there are easier characters to do that with that I think would be more worth it as a secondary. If you used to play ZSS and you want to just co-main with her, I think that makes sense. She is obviously a really, really good character with a lot of great matchups and such, and it makes sense to want to counterpick with her. But if you're just about to pick someone up, I think there are more characters that are more worth it. Something similar to a Pikachu and Fox situation. She takes a lot of precision and a lot of work to get into a really good ZSS. Like, I think she seems basic on basic level, but like when you learn that, like, man, it's hard to hit, it's hard to kill, it's hard to do damage. Sometimes like it just gets pretty frustrating, and I know a lot of ZSS mains feel the same way, and it takes a lot of work to get her to the point that you're actually doing it and if everything's flowing correctly. So if you're not willing to put in the work, I understand, and there are easier characters out there that do what she does. And next up is Wario, and I'm going to put him in another of the usually a kind of pick you're used to main them tier. Now, I do think that Wario is still a really great character, but after the nerfs and after I'm knowing that he isn't the easiest character to just try to understand how to get damage and how to move around with, I think there are just a lot of characters that outclass him when it comes to just being a counterpick character. I don't know many characters that Wario straight up counterpicks strongly. I think Waft is the scariest thing about him, obviously. Like, it's super good, it's super strong, but even then, Wario just doesn't put on the pressure like a lot of characters do, and doesn't beat a lot of characters either. So I think if you wanted to pick a character who's a better bruiser or puts on more pressure or even has comeback mechanic, I think Wario is more of a used to play him so I know what I'm doing kind of thing, and not really a counterpick to pick up. Next up will be Snake. Snake's gonna be I think Snake's gonna be one of the hardest ones to rank for me. Should be a great counterpick. Usually a counterpick. I'll probably put him here, and usually a counterpick used to main him. I think Snake takes a lot of time to become really good with. I feel like it takes so much time to be good with him that if you're picking him up, you're playing him as a main. But the thing that keeps me from saying he's too technical is it's not really technical in the you need to practice him a lot to understand. It's more there's a lot of things he solves differently from other characters. He plays very differently from a lot of the cast. He takes a lot of time to understand what you're supposed to be doing. He's not just go in, mash button. He's more of a setup trap character trying to influence what your opponent's doing. But you have to understand how to influence your opponent. So I think he takes a lot of time in that respect. If you know that how to play Snake, how playing Snake works, then of course he's a great counterpick character. Means a lot of the characters that matter. But if you don't, I don't think he's easy to switch to, and I don't think he makes a lot of sense to use when you first play him. But just to say, I don't want to say he's so technical you can't use him, because obviously if you know what you're doing, he's not that intensive, he's not that it doesn't take that much practice to understand. It's just trying to understand them is the biggest point. All right, next we have Mr. Ike. I'm going to put Ike in great counterpick. Now, there is a lot of great Ike players out there. There are a lot of strong Ike players out there. And I think a great thing about Ike is while he isn't easy to understand how to hit certain players who know how to deal with Ike when they don't, it's so good. It's so much, it's like counterpicks certain styles, counterpicks certain characters, and he's not hard to switch to. I feel like if you have those 3 attributes when it comes to your character, they're a great counterpick for a lot of players. But I think that's the thing holding him back from it. Sometimes it's just really hard to hit certain players who know how to deal with Ike, who know how to deal with Nair, know how to deal with the grounded options, and Ike has gotten buffs that make it so he can actually combat those types of players now. Now you can be a little bit more smart, but you know, with a bit of time and understanding that you can't just autopilot away. And then sometimes, like, I think that would make him an amazing counterpick. If you can autopilot Nair like you could before, I think he'd be an amazing counterpick because he does so good against those types of people. But once you learn that you can't autopilot away everything, and you move times 2 and you just, you know, play Ike correctly, he's a great counterpick to use against a lot of people and a lot of players. All right, and next up we have Pokemon Trainer. Usually a counterpick if you're used to mainland tier. Now I can tell that I'm putting a lot of characters in this tier, and I think the reason I'm putting these characters in this tier mostly comes down to just how specific a lot of their stuff is, to the point that you probably were a main of them if you were to use them as a counterpick. When it comes to just, I need to counterpick a person, I need to counterpick a character, the real plus of counterpicking with these characters is they don't lose to bad characters. I don't think there's a single bad character that does well against PT. Maybe, and I'm saying this is a gigantic maybe Zelda, but I don't think that's even true. But I don't think this is, like, mid tiers and low tiers usually get bodied by Pokemon Trainer, but there are a lot of top tiers that don't, and I think there's a whole style that does very well against PT that also struggles, but they take a lot of precision and time to get used to. Sure, you could go the basic Ivysaur does Razor Leaf and Grab, and Razor Leaf Nair, and Squirtle does his basic combos, and Charizard cheeses. Like, that could just work. But who's going to put in the time trying to learn 3 characters at once when you can just learn one counterpick who will just be great at what you need to do for your secondary, as a secondary. I don't think most people want to solo, like, most people who play PT are solo main PTs. I know that Quid is trying to do, I believe Squid is trying to do PT Pac-Man, but that's because he mained PT for a super long time. I think that if you're going to play PT as a secondary, it's because you used to main them and you understand them, you already used all the practice, you already put all the time in to understand what you need to be doing with them, and I wouldn't suggest picking them up as a secondary. As a main, sure, that definitely works and you have a lot of great strengths, but as secondary, I think they're just a lot easier characters to switch to and a lot better characters to switch to. The final character we're going to be talking about today is Diddy Kong. I'm honestly going to say this, and I know there's going to be a little bit of controversy on this. Not even controversy, but like, I know people are going to call me stupid for saying this, but I truly do believe this, that Diddy Kong is probably going in the perhaps too technical tier for counterpick. I really hesitate when saying this because I think on paper it makes sense of what you're supposed to do with Diddy. Throw a banana, combo off of it, throw a banana, combo off of it, all of that stuff. But I think as people have gotten better and better at dealing with Diddy Kong, knowing that he's a threat now, that you need to have a lot of precision with what you're doing to be able to do some things that I think a lot of characters do a lot easier and a lot better than he does. I think banana is obviously the biggest point thing because, like, once you get bananas and like when you land bananas, it's like, oh, it's so good. But then you fight for one person who knows how to deal with your banana, and it's like, okay, maybe I can't just use banana over and over again, and then Diddy Kong becomes a what's worse character. So once you have to do banana tricks, you have to do Z catching, you have to do B reverses, you have to do throw down Z catch, or Z drop down air. You got to do lots of these banana tricks that I think you need like significant practice with. And I think a lot of people are just like, oh man, look at what Tweak does. Tweak does so many sick combos. I want to play Diddy Kong. And then you start playing them and you realize how much each input matters for when Tweak does it. And even Tweak misinputs it with Diddy Kong and dies because of it. So I think it's like, you got to put in the work, you got to put in the time to be able to make your Diddy Kong to the level of what Tweak's doing. And you could say like, okay, it's just them being lazy, they can't really keep up with it, but Tweak is out here struggling with people who are mashing on him and trying to do regular things where Diddy Kong just can't get away with it. I think most Diddy Kong mains, or most King Kong players are Diddy Kong mains because of how much work it takes. It looks easy, but it's not that easy, I promise. And then when you get the combos, when you get all that stuff in, then you start becoming even more of a threat. And then you become the high tier that Diddy Kong is meant to be. But until you actually do that, until you actually study that stuff, I don't think your Diddy Kong is going to be very, very strong, and it just becomes so much that I think they're just way better characters to use as a counter pick. I almost want to put them in the you counterpick with them if you use the main them tier, because that kind of really is the thing. But I don't think Diddy Kong bodies characters a lot of the time. I think he just does very, very well against a lot of top tiers. And because he does well against top tiers, he just can play in the meta and play very well too. I think he like slightly beats like a lot of common characters, like ZSS, like Roy, like Palu, like just those kinds of characters where it's like, yeah, they have to deal with Diddy Kong, they have to deal with his stuff, and once you are able to deal with Diddy Kong stuff, it becomes so much harder for Diddy Kong. And alright, that about wraps it up for part 3. If you want to see a part 4, make sure you just like the subscribe. I really do appreciate everyone watching every single video. If you're just going through them, trying to understand which characters are what. I honestly am surprised how little I'm putting people in amazing counterpick. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, okay, if I'm thinking about the actual good ass counterpicks, we haven't actually gotten to them yet. But you know, we'll see. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys later.